This is the City of God podcast, where Christ meets culture.
And welcome to the City of God podcast, where we are weekly talking about today's biggest cultural issues, all through the lens of God's infallible word. My name is Rob Pacienza, and today I'm joined by Ryan Bomberger, and he is the co-founder of the Radiance Foundation. Ryan, thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, it's great to be here with you.
Explain to our audience a little bit about the Radiance Foundation.
The Radiance Foundation is a 501c3, life-affirming educational nonprofit. We call ourselves a factivist organization where we love to illuminate that every human life has God-given purpose. So that includes live multimedia talks, where we do about 60 events every year, college campuses, Harvard, Princeton, University of Notre Dame, pregnancy center galas. We write op-eds, that's our factivism. So every week we write an op-ed on all these issues. We have our community outreaches, including our Adopted and Loved initiative. And then we also publish books to actually serve as tools to help people engage in these culture-shaping issues.
Yeah. Two of your books, we'll get to the other one in a second. You've published many books, but you have books even for children and families.
Yes.
So as we were talking about off camera, we've got She is She and He is He. As we said jokingly, these books are causing quite the stir,
right,
and quite the controversy. Why? What are these books about, and why would they be so controversial right now?
Right. Well, the books just state simple biological facts that he is he and she is she. And somehow that's extreme. I mean, my wife and I, we actually live in Loudoun County, Virginia, where it's basically, ground zero for school boards going wild. But many public schools have taken this approach that they're going to deny basic science. And so we wanted to create tools for parents that are age appropriate. This is for kids 2 to 8, that actually teach them about the beautiful differences between boys and girls, to celebrate what it means to be a female, to celebrate motherhood, to celebrate fatherhood. Of course, these books are, they're pro-science, pro-life, pro-adoption, and quite honestly, they're just pro-common sense.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much we have lost that, and that this is somehow radical to say, wait a minute, she is a girl, that he is a boy, and that it's beautiful to celebrate the differences. And they're not swappable.
Yeah.
They're not interchangeable.
God defines gender, not us.
Yes.
So yeah, please pick them up. He is he and she is she. Incredible books of teaching our children about God's identity.
Yes.
That we are marked and created in his image. And that's what makes our identity beautiful. It's what makes all human beings sacred.
Exactly.
And have intrinsic value.
Yep.
We'll get to your other book in a second, but let's talk about the intrinsic value of every single human being. What happens in a society when we lose the sacredness of human life?
Abortion. Mutilation of children outside of the womb, as we're seeing with all the cult of transgenderism. And this is not to attack without people understanding, look, we love people. And when you love people, you don't want them to be harmed. But when you fail to see them being created in the image of God, it justifies all kinds of violence. It justifies all kinds of radical ideologies that actually dehumanize people. Abortion dehumanizes women. Obviously, it kills their children. Transgenderism and the puberty blockers and the carcinogenic drugs, they dehumanize the individual. The body mutilating surgeries. I mean, you're dehumanizing. It's hard to imagine anything more violent, actually, against people in our culture than what's going on in these two issues. And so that's why, the work that we do through the Radiance Foundation, we're saying, look, every human life has God-given purpose. Every human life is equal and inherent worth. And when we understand that and embrace that, we address these culture-shaping issues so differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the doctrine of the Imago Dei has transformed civilization. I remember one thought leader said, if it was not for the doctrine of the Imago Dei, Western civilization would be unrecognizable. Right. And so when we think about abortion, many people look to the church, they look to evangelicals and they say, why do you guys harp so much on abortion? Isn't it about justice for all? What's your answer to that?
Well, life is justice. And I know this so personally because I was conceived in rape.
Wow.
I had a birth mom who experienced the horror and the violence of rape, and despite being a victim of that violence, did not make me a victim of abortion. I grew up in a family of 15 where I have 12 siblings. 10 of us were adopted. And so we live in a culture right now that dismisses the value of human life, saying, you know what, well, that child shouldn't grow up in poverty, or that child shouldn't grow up in a single parent home, or that child shouldn't grow up with physical disabilities. Well, no one's better off dead. We are all better off loved. And I am so grateful to my parents that they loved us, that they unleashed God-given purpose in us. And that's why, I'm married today to my love of my life, Bethany, and we have 4 kiddos, 2 of whom were also adopted. And everything that we do is really rooted in the fact that we see every human being as intentionally created. I mean, Psalm 139, 13 through 16, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. There's no asterisk there that says, oh wait, only if you're planned, or only if you fit that so-called picture of perfection. No, every human life, fearfully and wonderfully made, and God specializes in enabling triumph to rise from tragedy, which I'm hoping that my life is a testament to that.
Absolutely. We stand for justice from womb to the tomb.
Right.
And that's so critically important. Ryan, you and your family were involved in somewhat of a controversial situation, Loudoun County, Virginia, and the school board meetings that really turned around an entire election. Tell our audience about that situation and your involvement in it.
Well, Loudoun County Public Schools takes the position that we have to deny basic biology, we have to mangle our language, and we have to actually just say yes to drugs, which growing up, the whole thing was just say no to drugs. But
right.
We took the approach that, look, we're going to help educate actually a number of the parents in that community. And so we held house meetings in trying to educate them about the issues, about racism, about how racism is a sin, but that anti-racism, that movement is destructive. And so we got involved in educating parents that way. And then we also spoke at these meetings, which quite honestly were surreal. They were insane. Local news would typify the meetings as, breaking into chaos, and what they actually meant was that we didn't do jazz hands. At the meetings, we were supposed to do jazz hands and not clap. Wow. That was the chaos that they were talking about. But
amazing.
The real chaos are these school boards that are introducing porn and pedophilia into these schools through what they call diversity books, by violating parental rights, by saying, you know what, you as the parent, you're actually the danger to your own child.
Amazing.
And also allowing people to basically use children as their testing ground for their emotional and sexual affirmation. Kids aren't in the classroom for that. They're there to learn. Can we get back to teaching the basics and not indoctrinating them with critical theory, with queer theory, and with insanity when it comes? I mean, they're even talking in our school system how math is racist.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Equity grading.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Because if you're black and brown like me, you deserve a different standard. How racist is that?
Yeah. It's reverse racism.
Right.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being a voice and for standing up for what is true and refusing to buy the lie that we're somehow co-parenting with the government
Right.
and this is somehow God's design.
Right.
Another book you wrote, Not Equal, Civil Rights Gone Wrong. Tell us a little bit about this book and what led you to write it.
That was actually born out of one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I was actually sued by the NAACP for parroting their name, calling them out in their radical pro-abortion position. So the NAACP, which I grew up revering and loving for many reasons, came out against us when we did a billboard campaign in the Oakland area, San Francisco Bay Area, and we placed billboards that said "Black and Beautiful, TooManyAborted.com," and was highlighting the past and present racism of Planned Parenthood, talked about pregnancy centers and all the help they provide for mothers and fathers in unplanned pregnancies, and called men to greater responsibility to fatherhood. But the NAACP called it horribly racist and said that we gave the false impression that Planned Parenthood kills black babies. Well, they kill black babies, white babies, and every hue in between, over 350,000 every year. So I wrote this article, being the factivist that I am, and I entitled "The National Association for the Abortion of Colored People." And let's just say they did not like the title, and so they sued me. They sued the Radiance Foundation. 2 years in federal court, but they lost. We were represented by Alliance Defending Freedom. And so that book was born out of that, because I'm thinking, how are these civil rights groups not actually defending the most marginalized and the most vulnerable? How's the NAACP saying Black Lives Matter, but not in the womb? And so that's part of my calling out civil rights gone wrong.
That's awesome. Not equal, civil rights gone wrong. What's your message to Christians who look at the state of the culture and they go, it's a lost cause? Apathy's rampant. They're pulling out of running for local offices. They're not even attending school board meetings anymore. What's your message to the apathy that we see in the North American church right now?
Well, it is the apathy that allows sin to fill that vacuum. It allows the chaos and the confusion to fill that vacuum. And I just want to encourage people. I mean, slavery abolitionists thought it was impossible to stop the injustice of slavery, but they never gave up. Even when they were defeated over and over and over again, they didn't give up. I'm really glad they didn't give up, because I wouldn't like to be a slave today.
Yep.
But we have to remember that, one, our hope is not in the latest newscast. Our hope is in the Word of God. He is not only the eternal hope, but he is our hope here in this short life on earth. And it's amazing what happens when we step up and we courageously proclaim the truth, when we speak it, when we live it. And what I often tell young people who feel discouraged because they're like, well, the crowd's going this way. Well, who cares? Courage doesn't need a crowd. It just needs someone with conviction.
Yeah. Last question. Heard your talk at Liberty University, just powerful. Just encourage our audience to YouTube your talk from Liberty a few months ago. But what is your message to the young people today that have grown up in the church? They're going off to college campuses, many of them secular college campuses. What do they need to do to be prepared to face the onslaught and the opposition that they're going to face on those college campuses?
People have to remember, as Christians, we don't live to be loved in the sense that we need the world to reciprocate the kind of love that we're showing the world. We're going to be hated, and they need to understand that, and it's okay. Jesus said, guess what? The world hated you. They hated me first. And so young people need to understand that, look, we're not in this for the follows. We're not in this for the virtual social media likes. We're in this to help bring people to the saving salvation, the knowledge of Christ. And so in that whole process, look, pursue excellence. I love, as a creative, I love when I see kingdom excellence. I love when I see people persevering through the most ridiculous obstacles. I mean, there are people who are overcoming physical obstacles. I have siblings who have physical disabilities who've overcome in many different ways. We overcome all the time. And for young people to remember, and for the older people to remember, that we don't do this on our own strength. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So when you look at a culture and it feels hopeless, just remember, we know the author of hope.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where can they find out more about Radiance Foundation?
People can go online and go to Radiance, RADIANCE.life, and you can find us on most social media platforms until they kick us off.
Hey, I appreciate your courage and your faithfulness. Remain steadfast. Know you have got people all around the country that you don't even know that are praying for you, for your wife, for your family, and for the important ministry you have right now.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap with the City of God podcast. Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you were encouraged, inspired, informed by what you heard today, I pray that you would pass this along to family members, friends, or any Christian that wants to engage the cultural issues of this day, all through the lens of God's infallible word. Thank you once again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the City of God.
The City of God podcast is produced by Coral Ridge Ministries and made in partnership with the Institute for Faith and Culture. Visit us at cityofgodpodcast.com to access all of our previous episodes. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or anywhere you get podcasts. A full video version of this podcast is available on YouTube. This is the City of God podcast, where Christ meets culture.